Okay, so now to bring in some images, you should be going to essentially Google Image Search. You can find your images there. You will want to search for whatever people, animals, and plants you want to bring into your final project. Just make sure that you're using the highest quality versions of those images that you can find. So the largest in terms of size, in terms of pixels, etc. Now, in order to bring in imagery into Photoshop, we're going to be doing it a little bit differently than we did in Illustrator. Instead of file placing, we're actually going to go to File Open. We're going to go find our images. I've got two here. It will open them up in different tabs up here on the top. So we have, this is our Untitled 1, which is our cut and paste document, which is to size. It's very important that we work in this document because that's going to be the correct resolution and the correct size. And then we have our other images that open up in these other tabs. So I've got a little cute, weird puppy here, and then a flower, and we're going to work from these. But the first thing we're going to do is take our entire image, or a large portion of it anyway, and cut and paste it into our actual document so we can work. We're not going to do all our work in this image. We're always going to be working in this one. Okay? So we're going to start with, let's start with a flower here. And the way we do this is by making a selection. So Photoshop is all about selections. There are a bunch of tools to make selections with, and we're going to learn a few of those today, very simple ones. The first is the marquee tool. So this is right here. You'll notice all these tools, a lot of them, yeah, all of them, have this tiny little triangle here. That's the flyout menu. If you click and hold, you'll have different versions of these tools. As far as the marquee tool, we're only going to use the rectangular one. And basically that allows us to just click and drag a box, and that makes a selection. I have a feather on here. Let me turn that off. So when you see this black and white sort of moving ant line is what they call it, that is our selection. Now, in Photoshop, when you have a selection selected, you can only affect whatever is in that selection. So you can see I tried to, just paintbrush all over this thing, but it only let me do stuff inside of that selection. Same for the eraser tool, right? So if you have a selection, you can only affect the things that are inside of that selection. Now you're all at some point going to run into an issue with Photoshop where it won't let you do anything. You keep trying to erase, you keep trying to paintbrush, you keep trying to do something, and it won't let you. It's not. It either gives you an error message or it's just not doing anything. Chances are you have a selection selected somewhere on the image that you don't know about, and you forgot about, or you forgot to deselect, something like that. So what you want to do in that case is just go select, deselect right here. You can see it's also Command D if you want to use the command. So we'll deselect that, and then that will allow us now to sort of work wherever we want to. Okay, so let's get a large portion of this, the flower anyway, and now we're going to copy and paste it into our Untitled 1. So in order to copy and paste, we can go Edit, Copy right here. You can see it's Command C, and then Paste is Command V. So those are two shortcuts that are really important to learn. So we're going to Command C here, we're going to move over to our document, and Command V. And there's our flower. Okay? I'm going to go ahead and move this guy down using my Move tool. So the Move tool is V on the keyboard. You can hover over it and get the shortcut. There you go, V right there. And you can see that the tool just allows you to move around whatever you click on and select. So I'm just going to move this out of the way a little bit. I'm going to go over here. I'm going to get our puppy with our marquee tool as well. Just enough of what I need there. And copy as well, come back over and paste. You'll notice that the puppy pasted a lot smaller, and that's because the puppy image is a lot smaller from Google. The flower is a much larger image, and so it pastes in at a larger size. Okay, from here we have a few options. Now I'm going to turn off the puppy here, And you'll notice over here we have layers. Layers is a little bit less forgiving in Photoshop than it is in Illustrator. You will kind of get the hang of layers as you work through this project. But every time, for instance, once we get into drawing or painting with Photoshop, Photoshop doesn't create a layer every time you make a paintbrush stroke or something along those lines. So for example, if I come in with a paintbrush and paint, you can see that it's actually in this layer 1. And if I turn it off, it turns off both of those, right? So that can be an issue later on. If it can be a little bit destructive if you do it in the incorrect way. Don't worry about that right now. So let's talk about other ways to make selections. At this point, we want to cut out the background from our flower image, right? So this background, this green background, is not a living thing, and because of that, it can't be in our image. So we have to cut out the background, and we can do that by using selections and then deleting them. So we already know our marquee tool, so we can make a selection there and hit delete on the keyboard, or go up to edit, cut, and that will delete that section, right? And that's great, except for we need a much more complicated section to get rid of this green background. And we can do that in a few ways. One of the ways is by using the lasso tool. So the lasso tool has 3 tools here. We're going to just use the polygonal lasso, so we're going to start there. I'm going to zoom in a little bit up here in our top right-hand corner so you can see really clearly. And the lasso tool just works in straight lines. So if I click, I can drag this straight line anywhere I want it. I can make another click. And basically, whenever I do this, I'm adding points to the selection. And when I go back to the end, it will make a full selection. Now I can delete whatever's inside of that. Right? And that is essentially the selection or the lasso tool in a nutshell. Now, in order to get these smaller curves, there's no way to actually get curves with the polygonal lasso tool. So you just have to kind of make small clicks. And this may seem kind of tedious, but essentially you can do this entire image in 2 or 3 minutes. So it's not really that bad. And this is how you make a selection like this. And you just go around in chunks and delete. Okay? Now, if you're doing that, so we're going to do this, we're going to do this. If you accidentally double click, so I'm going to double click right here on accident, you can see that it just draws a straight line back to the beginning of that selection. And that can be kind of annoying because now if I delete, it's going to delete part of my flower. So you're going to run into this at some point. It's a very easy mistake to make, but it's okay because we can always go back and modify our selections. You modify selections using 2 keys on the keyboard, the Option key or the Alt key. Well, actually, they've changed that. That's interesting. Okay. And the Shift key right here. So it looks like the standard default is to do what's called a minus selection. So you can see that we have the icon here and a minus. And now if we make a little selection here, it will actually subtract this from our original selection, which is good. There you go. And then if we want to add to it, we press the Shift key, and now we can add to the selection. Okay, so that's a way to modify selection. If you don't see the minus, you use the Option key to get the minus, use the Shift key on the keyboard to get the plus. That's a way of subtracting from the selection, adding to the selection. Okay. And that's the lasso tool in a nutshell. That's basically going to be all we're using it for. Very simple. Another way that can be really useful to make selections is the Magic Wand tool. The Magic Wand tool is a little bit harder to describe. but it works off of this tolerance number right here. And basically what it does is it selects pixels that are within a certain range of tonality. And by tonality, I basically mean either color or, more accurately, a scale of white to black. And what this allows us to do is, with images like this, where say this flower is on this really flat background, it allows us to go in and click and actually select a chunk and then delete that. Now, it chose all of those dark green pixels because they were all within this tolerance, this 15 pixel tolerance level. So if I set this up to like 50 and then I click again, you can see that now it's starting to get some of these pixels, right? So it's not always going to be perfect. If I set it too low, whoops. If I set it too low, then it won't get everything we need. So you really have to find the correct tolerance, and you, of course, you have to have an image that works really well with it. You can use it anywhere. So I can, if I set the tolerance, say back up to like 8, I can come in here and you know, select little chunks and delete them. Right? It's not really going to benefit me, but I can do it. So that's how the Magic Wand works. In a essentially, you just have to have the right tolerance. So the tolerance will, of course, be different depending on your image and depending on the background and the foreground. But if you find the right imagery, you can make this pretty simple. Now, like I said in the examples video, you still need to come in here and clean up a lot of this little artifact material. You can do that using the eraser tool right here. And you can come in and erase out the artifact material. You also would want to get rid of this dark halo. So it's a much more clean selection. I could probably try and do that a little better with my Magic Wand tool. Raise the tolerance so it actually picked up a lot of this dark stuff. And that's how you want to clean up your images. So the eraser tool works off of this right here, size and hardness. So size being, of course, the size of the actual eraser, the hardness being the edge of the brush. I'm going to talk about that in a couple of minutes. All right, and that's our flower. Now I'm going to separate this video. In the next video, we're going to talk about our puppy, and then we're going to move him around and change the sizes.